More than a fifth of our MSPs have so far confirmed that they will be quitting Holyrood at next May's election. The number of retirements is higher than we've seen in any previous election cycle and includes some of the biggest figures in Scottish politics. 4 current Cabinet Secretaries are set to go: Michael Russell, Jeane Freeman, Rosanna Cunningham and Aileen Campbell. Among other well-kent faces leaving are the former Scottish Conservative and Labour leaders Ruth Davidson and Iain Gray, the SNP heavyweight Alec Neil and the presiding officer Ken MacIntosh. So where will the big exodus leave politics? Will we miss experienced servants who've been round the block? Or are we needing new blood to reinvigorate political life? Joining us now is the departing Labour MSP Neil Findlay, the SNP activist Fatima Joji, who's bidding to be selected as a Holyrood election candidate, and the political commentator and former Conservative MP Peter Duncan. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Neil Findlay, why are you standing down?
Well, John, a few years ago, my wife was unwell, and thankfully she's back to full fitness. And that period, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it does make you reappraise your life and reappraise what you're going to do for the rest of your time. You only have one go at this in life, and that's what made me think about my future and take this decision. I didn't take it lightly. I'd been thinking about it for some time. And actually, there's a sense of relief when I did make that decision. But that won't stop me from campaigning, from getting involved in the issues that motivate me and get me jumping out of bed in the morning. And I hope to continue pursuing the campaigns and with the same vigour when I stand down for Parliament.
And Neil, many other MSPs taking the same approach as yourself. And the presiding officer, Ken MacIntosh, is saying the Parliament is losing independent thinkers. Briefly, do you think it is?
There aren't many independent thinkers in Parliament. The whips have a lot of power in Parliament, and I think the Scottish Parliament is even more tribal than Westminster. The good thing about the House of Commons, which is often maligned, is that there are independent-minded, particularly backbenchers on the government side who, whether that's Labour governments or Conservative governments, who are willing to stand up and take on the government, and independent-minded figures from other parties. We don't really have too many of them in the Scottish Parliament at the moment.
Fatima, you want to stand for the Scottish Parliament? Are you an independent thinker?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm standing with the party I've chosen because I support a lot of their policies. So I do feel that my ideas are aligned with theirs. So in terms of thinking independently, I think everyone comes into politics recognising the power within themselves, and it's about looking at the power in people. So I do believe that everyone comes in with a sense of ideas and their own progressive vision, and they tie themselves to parties so that because they recognise that these visions are shared.
And Peter, a lot being made of losing experienced people, but there's also a requirement for fresh faces, new thinking.
Yes, there is, John. I mean, at the end of the day, we're now 21 years after the formation of the Scottish Parliament. So I suppose it's natural that there will be a number of MSPs who will have come to the end of their natural tenure, so to speak, having been there for that duration. But change is good. It's great that new people want to put themselves forward for the challenge of public service, because that's what it is. It's about serving your community. And in order to create those opportunities, we can't have people staying around forever. So turnover is good. That's not to say there aren't some people who are proposing to leave the Parliament, Neil amongst them, who I think should still have had a contribution to make. And it's unfortunate that they've chosen to move on.
A key part of this change, the fresh faces, Fatima, is the idea of diversity. 2 out of 129 MSPs are not white. Does the Parliament need that diversity to bring this fresh thinking? And will it lose anything with the loss of these more experienced people, in view of you?
I don't think it will lose anything with the loss of experienced people because, as Neil mentioned, they're not going to really step down from their activism and their campaigning. I think I see a lot of them who are willing to continue with their activism and campaigning, whether it's at grassroots. In terms of representation, yes, it is appalling. 20 years of devolution, and we've only seen a total of 4 MSPs from a BAME background, all men. And at every election, we elect we've had 5 elections and we elect 129 MPs, and that's the result of what we have. We need to recognise that representation also it will enhance policy decision making, because we need that in order to recognise that society is diverse. And if you don't have that diversity at the decision making table, you're not going to create a society that's for everyone.
And Fatima, what do you think the new parliament might look like, ideally, at least for you?
Well, I'm delighted to see a lot of people from diverse backgrounds put themselves forward to be involved in politics, recognising that politics is accessible. It's meant to be for everyone. It's not for a certain group of people, certain class. What we need is that diversity of thought, the diversity in life experience as well. So I'm really happy to see that people are actually being encouraged to put themselves forward. I don't think you have to be a certain type of person to be in politics, and I don't think that we need to change this culture of making people feel that they can't contribute to their society in a meaningful way. So I think more people are waking up to the fact that politics is a place that they can see themselves, and that's why I'm really happy to see everyone putting themselves forward.
And Neil, the thing is, the parties dominate, often to the exclusion of independent thought. Does that remain a dilemma for the Parliament?
Absolutely. I think the whips and the Parliamentary Bureau, which is dominated by the business managers of the different parties, along with the government, dictate the parliamentary agenda. We don't have things like a backbench committee where backbench MSPs can drive an agenda. And you've got to use the parliamentary system and be smart about how you use the parliamentary system. Use a bit of guile at times and a bit of tactics and be controversial if necessary in order to take your agenda forward. But the Parliament works for the established parties, and you have to have sharp elbows to muscle your way in on that.
And Peter, you're agreeing with that. There is, for example, the regional lists. Does that, and the parties choose who go on these lists and what order they are, does that inhibit independent thinking?
I don't think it helps, frankly. I mean, I've always been someone who's advocated that, well, if we have to have a list system, then the full electorate should be able to prioritise that list system and not the parties. I say that as a former party chairman who was involved in the process of prioritising those candidates. So I say so with some experience. But I think what we need to do is reflect on the generation. The Parliament is coming of age, 21 years and so on. Let's now reflect on the changes that we now need to put in place to ensure that people of diverse backgrounds, diverse ethnicity, diverse life experiences can all contribute. Because, I mean, there are some trends that I think are unhelpful. I think the proliferation of people who have sought elected office purely having had a political background, I don't think that's helpful. I think we need to see a general expansion in the life experiences of people. I always had a saying which I used at Westminster many times during my short time there, and that was, until you've had a customer bounce a cheque on you, until you've had a child ill-disciplined at school, these are the life experiences that make you able to serve your constituents, and it's something we should champion amongst the new generation of candidates coming forward.
And Fatima, you're agreeing very emphatically with that.
Yes. No, I definitely agree, because I'd like to see, for instance, more teachers in Parliament, because they know everything about conflict resolution and managing heavy workloads. I'd like to see doctors in Parliament, because they know everything about working under pressure. I think this idea that you have to have a certain level of education, you have to maybe study politics or just work in politics, is actually detrimental to societal progression, because what you need to realise that you're dealing with people who are actually working their day-to-day lives with diverse jobs, working zero-hour contracts. And if you're going to have a parliament that's made up of people who haven't experienced any of those things, how on earth are we going to pass through interventions that are actually going to help when those people making the decisions are far removed from those realities?
Neil, these ambitions were there even at the start of the Parliament. Why didn't it happen? Or has it happened?
Well, John, that's long before my time. It may seem like I've been in longer, but this is only my second session in the Parliament. But I think the points are well made by the panellists. I mean, one of the things that I think we need, as well as more black and minority ethnic candidates, is more working class candidates in Parliament and more key workers in Parliament. Fatima references teachers and doctors. I was a teacher before I went into Parliament, but before that I was a bricklayer, and I'm very proud to have done that job for 10 years and having served an apprenticeship. These are the type of backgrounds. I want to see people who are social care workers. I want to see people who are on the front line in the pandemic in Parliament. And, there are moves within my own party, and I hope they will be successful, to bring a whole new generation of MSPs, councillors and MPs forward and bring them into Parliament, because that's really what we need.
Peter, how does Holyrood compare to Westminster?
Well, in many ways, very favourably. In other ways, not so great. Neil referred at the start to the lack of that backbench character, those people who are able to, without fear or favour, challenge their party's front bench. That's something which is routine in Westminster, hasten to add, particularly over the last year or so. It's something that's very rare in Holyrood. Amongst the SNP, or the government for clearly a long number of years. It's one of the most, you can admire it in one perspective. They are one of the most disciplined parties of government there has been. But on the other hand, where is that challenging voice? And I hope that amongst all the candidates elected next May across all the parties, more than anything else, what we see are self-confident voices who will back their parties, back their joint agenda, but will also feel free to come forward and say, do you know what? I think we've got it wrong there, and we need to do something about it before we inflict it on the public. And I think that would be a much more healthy atmosphere in which to develop the policies in Holyrood for the future.
And briefly on that point, Fatima, you've got ambitions to be in the Parliament. You may have ambitions to develop your political career. Can you be that different voice? Do you expect that you will be?
I hope so, because I do feel that diversity in experiences is necessary, and I do feel that I can contribute to that, because we need to consider that intersections, for instance, that's your class, your religion, your educational upbringing, and these need to be reflected in Parliament if we're going to represent diverse voices. So I do feel that recognising these intersectionalities of the wider population and drawing them into Parliament is certainly going to help. So I do feel that I do have something to offer in that respect, in terms of thinking, in terms of activities, and in terms of upbringing.
And there we will have to leave it. But thank you all for joining us on Scotland Tonight, looking ahead to next year's Holyrood election. Thank you.